It's River to River from IPR News. I'm Ben Kiefer. Iowa's farmland sits on more than soil. Deep underground may be the makings of a clean energy economy. I have to say, I knew little about this until digging into this topic in the past few days, and I'll bet you knew next to nothing or nothing about it as well. So today, we are in for a treat. We go a mile beneath Iowa's fields to talk about a billion-year-old rock formation where geologic hydrogen is hiding. Geologic hydrogen, that's a naturally occurring, potentially clean-burning gas that companies are already spending millions of dollars to find. Geologic hydrogen is sometimes called white or gold hydrogen, and unlike nearly all hydrogen on the market today, it doesn't have to be manufactured. It may already be down there in great quantities, perhaps. So in the next few minutes, we explore what it would actually take to build a hydrogen economy here, who's already drilling, and why new state legislation has some of Iowa's own geologists worried. In just a few minutes, we'll be joined by geochemist Betsy Swanner, professor of Earth and Atmosphere and Climate at Iowa State University. Back in April, she hosted a workshop bringing Iowa researchers together on geologic hydrogen. I spoke with her recently. We'll hear from her in just a moment. But first of all, to a conversation from yesterday with Ryan Clark, Associate State Geologist for Energy and Minerals with the Iowa Geological Survey at the University of Iowa. Ryan, welcome back to our program.
My pleasure, Ben. Thanks for having me.
Ryan, you are a geologist. You're mapping Iowa's bedrock, tracking the companies already drilling. First of all, let's get excited. Let's dream a little, if you agree with that term. For someone hearing geologic hydrogen for the first time, what is the potential here? We have a lot of question marks, but what is the dream?
I think the dream would be that Iowa gets to play some type of role in the energy transition that we're already undergoing with trying to kind of lean away and eventually phase out fossil fuels. We're already a state that strongly supports wind, maybe even solar, and I think it wouldn't be too far to say that hydrogen could potentially be another one of those alternative energy sources that Iowa could play a role in developing.
Okay. Why haven't most of us heard of it until now? I've been doing this talk show for over 20 years, Ryan. This is my first one on geologic hydrogen. How did that happen?
Yeah, no, that's okay. It was news to me around 2020, 2021 was kind of when I first started hearing about it. And like a lot of things, it's just a matter of waiting for the need to show up and people to start looking at how to address that need. And sometimes we come up with pretty interesting solutions. So it is fairly new in the larger scale research space. Although geologic hydrogen has been known about, of course, for many, many decades.
Okay. Give us the 101 on geologic hydrogen. How would you explain what it is, where it comes from?
Well, certainly in the case of Iowa's geology, it really starts with rocks that originated as lava, essentially, igneous rock that was molten and then erupted at the land surface through large fissure eruptions when the North American continent tried to rip itself apart about a billion years ago. That is the Mid-Continent Rift system. And when those lava rocks come out, the general term for those is basalt. They've got a lot of elements and minerals in there, magnesium, iron, for example. And it's those basalt rocks, those iron-rich and magnesium-rich rocks that have the potential to generate hydrogen. It's through a natural process where they kind of undergo a little bit of alteration in the presence of groundwater over time, where the minerals sort of change over time, and that change generates hydrogen. So, we're really looking for the source rocks, the right types of rocks with the right types of mineralogy that could generate hydrogen. And the Mid-Continent Rift, which underlies a large portion of Iowa, does have a pretty significant volume of those types of rocks.
Hmm. And hydrogen, number one on the periodic table, the lightest element of all, right?
You got that right.
And we remember it from the Hindenburg disaster. Highly flammable, a lot of energy in hydrogen.
It certainly can be. Yep.
Hmm. Okay, so what has to happen for this opportunity to be explored to see what the potential is? And I understand there was what's it, 1961, there was uh, this is how we know there's geologic hydrogen down there, right? In Iowa, there was some drilling done.
Yeah, exactly. And what is really needed is deep drilling. There's a lot of water wells in Iowa. There's dozens drilled a day, but those are a few 100 feet deep. The types of drilling that we need to see in order to characterize these rocks, we're talking drilling 4, 5, 10,000 feet deep. And so only very few holes have been drilled that deep in Iowa. And some of them were drilled in northeastern Webster County, and investigating a structure, kind of a natural dome structure underground where the rocks were kind of bent in a dome. And they were looking to characterize the site for potentially storing injected natural gas, using it as kind of an underground storage tank. That site was not ever developed commercially, but it turns out that a few years after the initial test wells were drilled there, the U.S. Geological Survey pulled some gas samples. And from one of the wells, the gas sample had 96% hydrogen. Another well had 33%. So I believe that that's why the focus of the current hydrogen exploration drilling in Iowa is centered around there is because of those 1960s gas readings.
Hmm. And we have companies, a half dozen companies have boots on the ground in Iowa looking for the potential. What are they doing?
That's right. That's right. And I should preface this with the only reason I can say that I know of about half a dozen companies is because those are companies that have voluntarily approached the Iowa Geological Survey, saying, we're interested in understanding more about your geology, and of course, we're the place to go for that. We share whatever data that we have that can be of use to them, and most of the companies have done a really good job of kind of keeping a relationship with us. And um, but yeah, there's I would say there's a good half dozen companies that some have secured leases already, trying to square away land that they hope to drill on someday. And there's one company in particular that has gotten so far where they've drilled some actual deep test wells.
Hmm. We have a bill signed by the governor into law, Senate File 2490, extends the confidentiality window on drilling data from 18 months to a minimum of 5 years. In plain terms, what does that change for you and for smaller companies trying to, well, ascertain what we have underneath us potentially and trying to get into that space?
Yeah, I mean, what that means is, by law, anybody that drills an exploration well in the state of Iowa, they have to turn over their information, and even their physical rock samples, whether it's just chips from the drill bit grinding up the rocks to whole cylinders or cores. All of that data and material is required to be submitted to the state. And, we've always had in our laws that we'll keep that data confidential for up to a year and a half because we recognize that companies have to spend a lot of resources to get to the point where they're doing some exploration and granting them that little bit of a head start.
Hmm.
But what this means is, before this, after 18 months, that data was public, and if another company was looking to do some exploration and wanted some of that data that they could use to then refine their exploration plans, we could do that. And now instead of 18 months being the maximum term, it's now at a minimum of 5 years. So it really lengthens the amount of time that the public gets to see that new data.
Right. And I understand from the a company's perspective, they might say, hey, this is nice. Don't look at what we're doing over here. Let's hide it because we want to know what's there, but we don't want to share it with potential competitors. I don't understand what would be the public interest in extending it from a year and a half to 5 years? Or was this all driven by lobbyists of those companies or that company?
Yeah, I mean it's my understanding that the this legislation was primarily authored with the help of one company, the same company that has gotten to the point where they've already drilled. So they already have quite a bit of a head start. And there were lobbyists affiliated with that company that were very prevalent in this process during this last legislative session. So, and I agree with you. You would think that any company would say, "Yeah, I want to keep my data away from my competitors." But when I talk with the other five or six companies in the hydrogen exploration space, every one of them said, "No, we want the state to have the data for sure, because then the state has the expertise and the background knowledge to interpret that data and maybe put out maps or charts or other products that we can still use." And every one of them said that this 5 years was just way too long. I mean, the industry standard across the oil industry for over a century now is about 2 years. And so why going to five? That definitely puts the state of Iowa in sort of a unique space.
All right. Ryan, we have to take a short break. We'll be back to explore this fascinating area of, deep underground, maybe the makings of a clean energy economy. We go a mile or so. What is that? You mentioned the depth. This is several miles, right?
It can be, yeah. I mean, when we're talking, the deepest hole ever drilled in Iowa was over 17,000 feet deep. That was an oil exploration well. I could see hydrogen exploration going that deep someday.
Okay. We'll go deeper. After a short break, I'll continue my conversation with Ryan Clark. He's with the Iowa Geological Survey at the University of Iowa. It's River to River from IPR News. We're back with more River to River from IPR News. I'm Ben Kiefer, talking about something fascinating. We're going beneath Iowa's fields to talk about a billion-year-old rock formation where geologic hydrogen is hiding. That's a naturally occurring, potentially clean-burning gas that companies are already spending millions of dollars to find, sometimes called white or gold hydrogen. Unlike nearly all hydrogen on the market today, it doesn't have to be manufactured. It may be down there in great quantities. We just don't know. Ryan Clark is Associate State Geologist for Energy and Minerals with the Iowa Geological Survey at the University of Iowa. Let's get back to my conversation with Ryan. So we have a map in our mind's eye of Iowa, of course. Is it equally distributed everywhere? There's potential for geologic hydrogen, or is it hiding more likely in certain places than others?
Yeah, that's a good question. You know, the geology of Iowa is highly variable, especially this deeper, much older rock formations that we're talking about. And so the Mid-Continent Rift system, where we see a lot of potential for hydrogen, sort of imagine a swath or a stripe coming in from the north central part of the state and kind of angling down and exiting out through the southwestern part of the state. And that's the segment of the Mid-Continent Rift system that we have. Keep in mind, this is a feature that extends from Kansas through Iowa, Minnesota, up underneath the Lake Superior. So it's a large feature, but it kind of comes north central Iowa and goes through southwestern Iowa. And then there's also another potential formation, not exactly the Mid-Continent Rift, but somewhat related, and that's sort of isolated to the northeastern, I would say, quarter of the state. There's a series of again very old plutons up there that do also have the right rocks, to the best of our knowledge, that could produce hydrogen as well.
I can imagine many landowners listening to this right now with very piqued interest. What would you say to Iowa landowners who say, I might be sitting on something great?
Well, believe it or not, I've had several landowners and other organizations reach out to me. Some people asking just simply, "Is this real?" And I would say that it is. There's already thousands of acres under lease by legitimate exploration companies. As I mentioned, earlier, that's one of the early phases of the exploration process. So I would say that, be open to the idea that as an Iowa landowner, you own everything from the blades of grass in your yard to the center of the earth.
Hmm.
And you have the rights to that. So if a company says we're interested in what's underneath your land, have an open mind, listen to what they have to say, and it could end up actually becoming a lucrative investment in the future.
Yeah. Ryan, as a geologist, you've spent your career mapping what's underground. What is it like for you to be potentially at the front edge of an entirely new industry built on a rock formation nobody thought was worth studying, or very few?
Yeah, it's something that my colleagues and I kind of bat back and forth from time to time with a little bit of awe. Spending more than 14 years as a geologist of the state, spending all my time at the surface, looking at limestones, shales, things like that. Now thinking about these very, very deep, very, very old rocks is truly very exciting for me. And seeing that we can look at it from an applied science lens. And my colleagues and I, we've been partnering with faculty and students at the University of Iowa, and we're trying to use all of the old data from some of these deeper wells and incorporating it with some of the new drilling data we're getting. And we're really trying to understand the hydrogen system. We will even have an academic paper coming out here really soon that shows that we're really trying our best to understand what's going on here within the borders of Iowa in terms of hydrogen and as well as other things, to make sure that we can be a resource for anybody that has questions about it.
Another important thing you folks at the Iowa Geological Survey are busy with. Ryan Clark, thank you for sharing this aspect, Associate State Geologist for Energy and Minerals. Ryan, thank you. Take care.
Of course, Ben. Thank you. Anytime.
It's River to River from IPR News. I'm Ben Kiefer. If you're just tuning in, we're talking in the first portion of this program about geologic hydrogen, a naturally occurring gas trapped in ancient rock thousands of feet under Iowa that several companies are now spending millions to try to find. It's really quite fascinating. Geologic hydrogen is also sometimes called white or gold hydrogen, and unlike nearly all hydrogen on the market today, it doesn't have to be manufactured. It may already be down there in great quantities. So we're exploring this today on the program, dreaming a little, yeah, admittedly, but about what's being called a possible hydrogen rush right here in Iowa, and how researchers and geologists are trying to figure out if and how our state could build an industry around it. Yesterday, I spoke with Betsy Swanner. She's a professor of Earth, Atmosphere, and Climate at Iowa State University. Betsy, welcome to the program.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
Back in April, ISU, you hosted a workshop bringing Iowa researchers together on geologic hydrogen. Take us back to the April workshop that you hosted. First of all, what made you decide it was time to get researchers and university officials in a room together over this?
Yeah, that's such a great question. I'm a geochemist, and so part of my background is in understanding how iron-rich rocks like the ones below Iowa can lead to different reactions that can produce gases like hydrogen. And so I was hearing from my own professional network more excitement about geological hydrogen, people getting involved in research and making connections to this budding industry. And so I wanted to really bring that side of our understanding of what's going on with geological hydrogen to Iowa, specifically Iowa State University, because that's where I'm at. And my experience while I was preparing for more than a year for this workshop was that very few people knew this was on the radar. And so it was really an opportunity that I wanted to take to make sure that folks around Iowa, beyond Iowa State University, but those that are connected to science and technology, really knew what was going on and could kind of be ready for it.
Mm-hmm. List some of the people who were at this workshop, and you had a big name in geology come in to talk, I understand, right?
Yeah, so the headliner was Dr. Jeffrey Ellis, who's a scientist at the United States Geological Survey. And the reason I invited him is because he's sort of been at the forefront of pushing the Geological Survey's perspective on geological hydrogen and had co-authored a January 2025 report around prospectivity mapping of geological hydrogen in the U.S. And so we led off the workshop by letting him present a little bit about geological hydrogen. And I'd sent out a lot of invitations, both across campus and across the state. So there were a lot of professors and graduate students there in different areas of the university, from chemistry to geology to engineering to ag and bioeconomy. We had a crew come over from University of Iowa, from the Geological Survey. And then we had a few exciting additions, including our new ISU president, David Cook, who joined.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so tell me, you've got a room full of people with varying expertise, all related somehow, possibly, to geologic hydrogen. What were the takeaways? Did you see eyes opening wide, light bulbs over people's heads and saying, wow, or what? What was the feeling? What was the reaction, the takeaways here?
Yeah, there was a lot of energy and excitement in the room. And that was really my goal, was to open some eyes, because I'd been, beating the bushes trying to get people to come, and kind of got them there on faith that it would be relevant to them. But once we could really have a platform to explain what was going on and what the possibilities were, I definitely saw people's eyes lit up and lots of side conversations going. We had a really productive day.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so those, also for the benefit of those who may have just joined this conversation midway through, we heard from Ryan Clark, geologist, to talk about it. But in your words, tell us what's happening way down there, what we know happens in this chemical process, since you're a geochemist, and what are the open questions?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the main process we're talking about in Iowa rocks is serpentinization, which is a reaction between water and very iron-rich, we call them mafic minerals. So they're minerals that are really out of equilibrium with the Earth's surface. And so they tend to react chemically with water. And one of the key reactions is that reduced iron can actually reduce hydrogen in water, down to hydrogen gas. And I think some of the key questions right now that I've been seeing from my community is, what is the temperature range that this happens at? Because as we go deeper into the Earth, there's a geothermal gradient. It gets hotter as we go deeper. And our understanding at the moment is that this reaction is a bit more favorable under higher temperature conditions. So the question is really, how deep do we have to go? Or could we see it at lower temperatures in shallower rocks that might still produce enough hydrogen? And what are the conditions that might drive that lower temperature production?
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about potential uses. Continue to dream a little bit. This would be quite a ways down the road here. But what would be the potential uses? Let's say we find vast stores of it, are able to bring it up to the surface. What do you see happening with it?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of talk right now about sort of the low-hanging fruit, which I think is producing ammonium fertilizer from naturally occurring hydrogen using that Haber-Bosch process. And I think that would be amazing for Iowa to be able to have a homegrown production of ammonium. But I see so many possibilities beyond just ammonium fertilizer for hydrogen. There's a lot of folks around here who are interested in how it might reshape the electrical energy grid. Could it help sort of buffer these downtimes of wind and solar and be an alternative to coal and some of the other more traditional forms of energy? I see a lot of other cool possibilities too, especially building off our strength as an agricultural state. One of the things that I'm most interested is if there's ways in which sort of the bioeconomy or agricultural byproducts or agricultural waste could be combined with hydrogen to create value-added products. So for instance, whether or not organic molecules and hydrogen could be combined to make new types of fuels.
Okay.
One of the other possibilities I think I could highlight is that there's a chemist here, Aaron Sadow, And he works with the Ames lab, which is a Department of Energy lab on Iowa State's campus. And he uses a lot of hydrogen to do this very interesting reaction where he upcycles plastics into new products that also include fuels like diesel, jet fuel, and gasoline, even motor oil. And so traditionally, hydrogen is actually coming from petroleum. And so if he and his group could use this naturally occurring geological hydrogen that's produced locally, I think it'd be a game changer for some of these new technologies.
Okay, Betsy, we have just a few minutes left, and I want to get to a couple of other important points. Building a network, what would that take here? I understand Iowa's starting from not so much compared with other states in our area, right?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. We don't have a traditional industry in resource extraction geologically. And so we're sort of handicapped with just how many people in the state sort of work on these issues. And so I think that means we have some opportunities too, because as I've mentioned, I think Iowa has, some really unique capacities to grow a hydrogen economy. I'd like to see a network of folks from across different angles of geological hydrogen, whether that's from exploration or building a hydrogen economy or workforce development or industry partnerships that could be really used to build this and help to shape the future economy of Iowa.
Mm-hmm. You touched on it there. What would funding look like? Does that look like a major challenge?
It's a major challenge right now. And that's been one of the main barriers when I talk to people about geological hydrogen, especially researchers who have the capacity to produce really interesting technologies and discoveries that might be leveraged for this industry. The real barrier is that there's not federal funding right now. And at the state level, we don't really have another clear funding mechanism or integration to kind of point to drive the research side of things.
So, Betsy, be more specific about what Iowa is missing that states ahead of us have.
Yeah, I think other states like Michigan are doing things like Michigan Geological Hydrogen Exploration and Preparedness Initiative, which brings together these partners I'm talking about to set the stage for how ready the state is, both in terms of industry development, workforce, and economy.
Mm-hmm. So this company, is it Coloma, pretty tight-lipped
Yes.
about what it's trying to build? So that's tough for to build an academic partnership with companies that are have incentive to be tight-lipped, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I've been trying, and I'm still hoping that, some of these companies will be willing to partner with us and maybe match up researchers who have the ability to either produce sensors or catalysts for hydrogen production, things like that. And can we help solve some of the problems that they're encountering towards building this industry?
Mm-hmm. Okay, look forward. Give us some stepping stones that you see in the coming months, maybe years, an optimistic look at this working to scale. If hydrogen is harvestable, what would that look like in the coming months in an optimistic view for you?
Oh, that's a great question. It's really hard to know what the pace is. I know there's exploration is picking up, but, obviously from the legislative side, there's a lot going on nationally with state legislatures. And I'd love to see more partnership between those of us, like I'm talking about, who have some expertise around this issue and interest in it, and the sort of legislative and government side, as well as the industry side. What are the ways that we can set this up to be successful? The other piece that I think is something we need to tackle is how do we reach out to the public and help the public understand what is this, what's going on, what might it mean for you, if you're a landowner or if you're in the workforce and looking for new opportunities.
Mm-hmm. Is there anything individuals listening might do at this point, or do we sit back, fold our arms, and wait and hope?
I think starting conversations and building our own connections is great right now. I mean, I'm keeping lists of everybody I meet. So, when opportunities come, I can reach out to those people. And yeah, I'd be open to connecting more with others around the state.
Okay. Geochemist Betsy Swanner a professor of Earth, Atmosphere, and Climate at Iowa State University. In April, Iowa State University hosted a workshop bringing Iowa researchers together on geologic hydrogen. And Betsy's been telling us what a homegrown hydrogen economy could look like and what's missing to build it. Betsy, thank you so much.
Thank you, Ben.
Coming up after a short break, an ISU agronomist on what AI and citizen science are revealing about how plants adapt to their environments. We'll be back in just a moment. I'm Ben Kiefer. It's River to River from IPR News. It's River to River from IPR News. I'm Ben Kiefer. Switchgrass, that's a native prairie grass here in Iowa. It grows, as a matter of fact, from Texas to the Canadian border, and it's part of the Midwest landscape. It's been that way for millennia, and it may be part of our energy future as well as a potential biofuel crop. It's also, as it turns out, a very good teacher. A new study published in the high-profile journal Cell, that's C-E-L-L, from Iowa State University is using a method that might surprise you. Now listen to this. By scanning nearly 44,000 publicly posted photographs, now these are images that ordinary people uploaded to online repositories like iNaturalist with no scientific intent at all. And by running those images through an AI tool the team built first called Florist, researchers identified when and where switchgrass was flowering across the country. And what they found contradicted their own lab results. And resolving that contradiction led them to a deeper understanding of how plants genetically adapt to their environments. This research was led in part by Jianming Yu, agronomy professor at Iowa State University, the Pioneer Distinguished Chair in Maize Breeding, and director of the Raymond F. Baker Center for Plant Breeding. I spoke with him recently. Jianming, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much. It's exciting to be talking with you.
In plain terms, what is this study about, and what is the big finding you want our listeners to walk away with?
It's a fascinating study that we were able to couple the citizen science data with this common garden experiment. It's a scientific method where we collect all the genotypes together to raise them to see when do they flower. Being able to combine two sources of data together allow us to reveal the adaptation mechanisms.
So let's talk about the citizen science method that may be new to listeners. How do you define citizen science for someone who's never heard that term?
Yeah, we learned what is citizen science as we're conducting this research. It is basically that every day people taking a cell phone picture, but then instead of just store that in their cell phone, they upload this cell phone picture to an online database. With the cell phone picture, we'll be able to see their GPS coordinates, so we know where the picture was taken, but we also have a timestamp when it was taken. Coupling this information, we were able to discover when some of the switchgrass flower at what place. By collecting all this information together, we basically call this discovery process as citizen science.
And so these, I've said some 44,000 photographs, these are taken by people who didn't know it would be used for science later. They uploaded them to the cloud. Can you tell us a little bit more about who took them, where they came from? Did those people know at all that their pictures were going to be used for research?
We believe not. They are taking the pictures just for the fun, and then just for the beauty of the flowering plants or non-flowering plants. But because that the scientists, if you look at this data together, the scientific research can be described as a data mining or pattern finding process. You have large amount of data. If everything is random, there is not supposed to be patterns. When the data size is so large, if you find a pattern, that even the change is very mild because a large data set, it's significant, and then we'll discover the pattern.
I understand these photos came largely from the platform iNaturalist. So you have metadata, as you explained, location, date, and you have all of this. And here's where AI comes in, because with all of those photographs, the dates and everything, it's an enormous amount of data. So it's perfect for AI to move through quickly, unlike how many human hours it would have taken to do this, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, so you built this AI tool called Florist to screen these images. Tell us how that works.
So basically, with all this 40,000 photos, what we want is the pictures that the plants are flowering during the picturing process. We want to basically separate those pictures with the switchgrass flower or big blue stem, Indiana grass or little blue stem. We want to separate into two piles. One is flowering plants picture. One is picture of non-flowering plants. And then to do the separations, we need to train an AI model. Basically, we would use humans to identify a set of training set, some flowering plant picture, some non-flowering plant picture, and then train a model. When the model is trained, then we apply the model to the thousands of pictures to let it automatically classify as pictures of flowering plants and pictures of non-flowering plants. For those pictures of these flowering plants, and then we would have take this GPS coordinates and then time step to plot out whether at different part of the latitude when the switchgrass are flowering.
Tell us a little bit more about switchgrass. What is it? Where does it grow? I said from, all the way up to the Canadian border. Why is switchgrass worth studying?
And for multiple reasons, just like you said in the beginning, it's a native to North America. It was found at 48 U.S. state. It's part of the landscape for thousands of years. But also it's a highly promising bioenergy crop. Department of Energy designate switchgrass as a dedicated bioenergy grass. That's why some of the earlier research in the past 10, 15 years has went into the study of the switchgrass.
Yeah, and switchgrass is actually better for biofuels than corn, right?
Yes, that's that's one of the reasons. But at this time, corn stover is still used as a bioenergy source.
Yeah.
Switchgrass has not been large scale being used yet. Yeah.
Okay, so you built this AI tool. You have all this citizen science data, 44,000 images, and you extracted some 5,000 that were blooming. But then the data told you, opposite stories about when switchgrass flowers. You found something unexpected. What was that?
Yeah, from the citizen science data, we can clearly see that, switchgrass in the north flowered earlier. Actually, we can quantify this change as if you're going up north for 1 degree latitude, then it's flowered about a day and a half earlier. And in the south, it's flowered later. So the season is longer. And that's a trend we discovered. But at the same time, the group have been studying the switchgrass in the common garden experiment. This is actually a designed scientific experiment where you have different types of switchgrass all together studied at this designated common garden that are distributed across the latitude. So you're not just, study what is in nature, you study everything at scientific experiment sites. And then there, we find out that switchgrass actually, it's opposite trend. And in the south, it's actually flowered earlier. In the north, it's flowered late. So that's the overall trend was contradictory.
Yeah. So how did you make sense of it? Or have you made sense of that? Why would that be?
Yeah, this is so fascinating. We have to wrap our head around this. One thing you can say, which one is truth? Is the observation in nature is telling us the truth, or is a scientific experiment we designed? As a scientist, we'd rather believe that scientific experiment, it is actually why we call common garden experiment, right? We want to eliminate this environmental effect to compare them within the common gardens. But we look across the common gardens collectively as a whole, we see the opposite trend. So what we figured out eventually, we've done a detailed molecular analysis and also environment analysis with weather data. With this, we find out actually there's 3 different combinations of the haplotypes. These are the variants of 3 genes, underlying genes. They form 3 different haplotypes. Specifically, the 2 haplotypes. One haplotype, we call it Midwest haplotype. The other we call Gulf Coast haplotype. Those 2 haplotype seems to be occupy different geographic range. So in nature, the Midwest haplotype occupy the northern region. The Gulf haplotype occupy the southern states. But if you put those materials all together, and then the response to the different temperatures differently. The temperature key is we found out is April 25th to May 5th. So the temperature at this, period is being sensed. We think about plants are the mathematicians. They actually can sense the temperature high and low, deciding when they will flower. So it's this genetic haplotypes plus the sensitivity to the temperature that we discovered allow us to reconcile this contradiction.
If you've just joined us, my guest for this portion of the program, Jianming Yu, agronomy professor at Iowa State University. His team's new research published in the journal Cell combined AI image analysis of nearly 44,000 online photos with controlled field experiments and genetic mapping to explain why the same plant flowers at very different times depending on where it grows. So, Jianming, what does this research mean for Iowa farmers, for land managers thinking about switchgrass?
This tells us that as the weather pattern changes, different genetic materials will be better adapted to different parts of the state and part of the whole United States. And then we need to be aware of that whole plant adapted to the changes of the environment.
Now, citizen science data I've read is notoriously uneven. Some photos well lit. I mean, these people didn't take them under strict scientific protocol. Some photos are well lit and clearly labeled, others blurry, misidentified, or missing metadata. How confident are you that the conclusions drawn from these tens of thousands of self-selected, uncontrolled images is accurate?
When we were training the AI model, we actually manually inspected the pictures to make sure that the AI florist identified it correctly. We calculate the precision, recall rate, and F1 scores to make sure they are actually identify what we want to see. And then I think for citizen science, it's the massive number that is helping us. Yes, you will have some misclassified and then blurry pictures, but the number is the numbers game. The number is there. Number allow us to find the pattern.
Mm-hmm. Beyond your own lab, where do you see AI, artificial intelligence, and image analysis heading in the greater field of plant biology? Is it becoming a standard tool? Are we in the early days? What do you see as the potential here for AI analysis in plant biology?
Yes, in this research, the AI is being used for image analysis only, but actually in the agricultural research, AI has not only been used the image analysis, which we use a high throughput phenotyping to take images of corn, soybean at different time points to extract information, to do the modeling, coupled with molecular markers, but also in other part of the genomic research, we're also using the AI to discover the different parts of the genes, the potential function of the genes. So AI has been extensively used or researched in agriculture.
Jianming, where does this research go from here? What questions does it open up that you want to pursue?
We believe that not only that we discovered the adaptation mechanism of switchgrass, but the research approach itself, combining the citizen science, large-scale data collected from the nature, with this design experiment. We need both pieces to put the picture together. This scientific research, the approach, this scientific method this scientific approach can be leveraged by other scientists to study other species for adaptation, for production.
Mm. This is really poetic in a certain sense, Jianming, because this research suggests that switchgrass knows, sort of, I'll put that in quotation marks, it knows what season it is and where it is on the continent, if I'm understanding you correctly, and it's adapted over thousands of years to read its environment. I wonder, does that change how you think about plants as organisms?
Yes, sometimes we think that plants are so intelligent. They can sense in the environment. They can do the calculations. So that is plants are intelligent.
Mm-hmm. So you find yourself, when you're out in the field, taking a walk, looking at plants differently than you did before this project? And I imagine you post to iNaturalist as well. How do you see plants differently?
Most of our research involves corn plants and sorghum plants. Sometimes I will take my graduate student to the field. I ask them some set of questions and ask them to see that whether the plant are calculating. Plant are calculating, doing their calculations before they decide transition to next growth stage. And some of them do a better job, some others not do a better job, but eventually the plant have the best calculations is going to give us a higher yield, more stable yield, and then disease resistance.
Yeah. I imagine you're teaching, of course, agronomy students, but and I'm not, I haven't been schooled in agronomy, but this is amazing. It sounds like this research has sort of uncovered that we underestimate plants. And, it's been trendy. We've underestimated trees for a long time, and we're discovering new things about all kinds of plants that we didn't think was possible of them.
Yeah, that's right. We keep thinking about how, basically we want to discover how plants are calculating. This is one of the research we're doing that in terms of the plants are sensitive to certain environment condition at a specific growth stage. And then, that time window, that sensitivity, and different genotypes have different sensitivities, eventually determining the final phenotype.
Yeah, fascinating. Jianming Yu, agronomy professor at Iowa State University, thank you very much for sharing what your research team has been doing.
It's a great pleasure to talk with you.
And that does it for our show today. Today's program produced by Caitlin Troutman and Danny Gear, technical assistance from Steve Cooper. Catherine Perkins is our executive producer. I'm Ben Kiefer. Thanks for joining us.